So guess what I watched recently? That's right. Fant 4 Stick. I waited from 2015 until like a couple days ago to watch Fantastic Four from 2015. I don't know why, but I think subconsciously here might be why. Tim Story, who made Fantastic Four 2005 and the sequel in 2007, originally was going to do a third that was supposed to introduce, by rumors, Jimon Hansu as Black Panther. And there was talks, I don't know if you've heard of these before the Avengers was doing its thing, completely independent Fox, there were people set to write a script that involved taking a lot of the properties they had, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, Daredevil, and crossing characters over. And it's interesting that Black Panther had a sort of fate for this character to be introduced in an ensemble setting, because it's so bizarre, especially with What If and all these different things in Marvel, to sometimes ask the question of like what some people in another universe are thinking if they don't have Chadwick Boseman. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is phenomenal. I loved my time in the theater watching this movie. It's another revenge story where a hero breaches up to the edge of like, am I going to kill a person? And then their person tells them like, remember who you are and whatnot. But even that, and Angela Bassett's character yells to T'Challa when he's fighting M'Baku in the first one, show him who you are. And that's been her call to her children over this. And the idea that that's so ingrained despite them. Okay. Namor. Okay. Wow. He embodies the spirit, I've said this on a couple of platforms, of what I think of when I think of Namor. I have never quite followed his individual comic lines or his runs in Avengers and whatnot, but he always feels to me like an uncomfortable presence who is constantly a threat of being something imposing to the surface world. Feels like he's his protector, but he's willing to cross lines and kill to protect his people. And that spirit of the character, when we walked out of the theater, my wife pointed out, things don't feel resolved in a way that felt uncomfortable. And that discomfort is how I feel about Namor from Marvel Comics. I knew that this was going to be something I would enjoy. I did not know this was going to be something I would feel like enjoying is just like a pithy comment to make. Because this movie ties itself so hard to reality. There's something so real, even though Black Panther is so fantastical, so colorful, so far into the comic book aesthetic. And across the board, Ryan Coogler has consistently proved to me that no matter how commercial he gets, he is making movies because that is the art through which he wants to express something and communicate something. This is about Chadwick Boseman, the person's death, using footage of Chadwick Boseman out of character to influence the characters in a fictional narrative who are going through what we go through. And immediately after we got home, I was testing something on a television. I'm moving a lot of things around. And I watched the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes of Black Panther, all the way up until he meets his father in the ancestral plane. And if you've seen Wakanda Forever, you'll recognize this. It starts with a character in mourning because one of the ancestors has passed away, and the title of Black Panther is moving on. And the title of King is moving on. And kingdoms, very briefly, are in combat with one another over, in Black Panther, it's who is going to rule Wakanda. In Wakanda Forever, the ultimate conflict is who is going to stand against what they see as a common enemy in all the other governments, basically, of the world, primarily America. Martin Freeman, great to see him again. Still weird to hear him in an American accent. I love the little sort of POV role that he plays, showing us the conflict that's going on. He's supposed to be our fish out of water in the first movie that shows us about Wakanda and their technology and things. I never feel like he's 100% needed, but I feel like he was needed more here than in the first one because of the larger world elements at play. And that brings me to Ironheart, who they just touched on her and reflected her off of Tony Stark, with her being at MIT, with her being introduced in this in sort of a similar role to the way Spider-Man is introduced in Civil War. Iron Man's Mark II, the icing problem, hers running out of oxygen, and just, I really thought for a second that Ryan Coogler was going to do a full sort of Jon Favreau, like, suit up for the suit, and I don't miss that they didn't do that, but, like, this movie balances a lot, but everything that it's balancing is working. M'Baku, he is the first reason why I feel like this movie is bigger than just another superhero movie. He represents something that's true with all of the primary characters in the movie, except for maybe Okoye, and even still I love Okoye and the actress who plays her. These are fully rounded characters. They don't just play the same role to the end of the movie where it's like, well, this one is the love interest, and this one is a friend, and this one is the bad guy, and this one is the bad guy's henchman. All of these characters are present in this movie, but all of them, like, Namor is a villain, but Namor is a patient anti-hero for his people. The way people talk about Shuri is she stands as someone who sort of knocks tradition and points out some of the benefits of, like, moving forward and changing your ways. And this reflects off of M'Baku, who would typically be this muscle-headed sort of comic relief / action hero shot character, who then has to take a beating and recognize that his role in this ongoing chessboard of characters that they have might be to be more respectful of the security of Wakandans in order to earn the role of king. And he almost learns that by reflecting off of seeing what Shuri is going through, and these characters mean so much to one another. And then you have, the mentor Angela Bassett. Always the mentor dies, all the way since Star Wars, but in this movie, for them to double down on the loss and what that means to that character, and to have her in that place where she just feels like the world is unfair, and to have Shuri as a character be broken from that person who's so optimistic in the first into someone who absolutely doesn't want to admit she wanted to meet Killmonger. Like, everything in this movie is so purposeful that it feels natural, and that is so impossible with the blunt fact that it was not supposed to be this way. There is so much in every sequence in this movie. Characters layered on characters, learning from characters, pushing each other, feeling for each other, living happily with one another and in sorrow with one another. And one of the special things about Ryan Coogler is, started in Black Panther, I noticed that he will take diegetic elements like people chanting and non-diegetic elements like music that the character shouldn't be able to hear, and blend them. And the viewer is watching a movie where the rhythm of the supporting elements like the music and the editing informs what the character's choices are in a way that should break suspension of disbelief in the movie, but has never done it for me. I've recognized it and then I lose myself in it. And here it started really early on when the Talokans sing. And going in and out of the ship that they are invading gives me just enough information to know, with a character also saying, like, do you hear that? That music is not just a theme for them. That they are singing it, and that is haunting people and pulling them off and making them jump into the water. And this trend of you not being able to totally expect what's really there and what's not really there, and what reality is and isn't in the movie, bleeds all the way through to some of the final shots that we get of Chadwick Boseman. And Marvel and Ryan Coogler and the team's commitment to having this movie be something that really mattered to a real living person, instead of just trying to escape reality, made this stick a lot harder than I think it would. And when he's smiling, and you know that T'Challa rarely smiled in certain situations, and there's just a little part of the back of your brain that tells you that that's in between takes of Black Panther. That's not T'Challa in character. That's Chadwick Boseman. And there's just something too real. You know, even the little detail of them having T'Challa not tell anyone that he had a deadly disease until a certain point. It reflects reality in a way that lets you know that you're dealing with something on a level that's more personal. So even though this is a familiar comic book story, it is done with more polished direction, a better aesthetic than a lot of them, and this hits harder because it's tied to reality in a way that no other MCU movie is. I hope and I pray that Chadwick Boseman rests in peace, and I hope, you know, for the people who care about him, they have a sense of catharsis and peace about that. One of the first positive things about Marvel that happened the year The Dark Knight came out and Iron Man came out was that Iron Man came out in a time where the gritty reboot just started and you were going to get edgy Batman, edgy Spider-Man, and things like that. And they got credit for being grounded in reality, in making things feel like it has a believability to it, even if it's not possible, while still managing to be entertaining without having to drive itself so seriously. A natural consequence of this story is that it takes itself seriously. But that is so true to this story. I feel like we've gotten to a point where people are confident that they can do anything in the MCU, so they try to, instead of realizing they can do anything in the MCU, so now their job is to make you, the viewer, believe and care about it. And I think Ryan Coogler understands that. And I think this is going to stand head and shoulders above several other entries in the MCU for a very, very, very long time. Maybe until T'Challa grows up to become the Black Panther again. I was trying to avoid. Doesn't matter.